Welcome to the podcast. If you're on TikTok, welcome. This is going to be a very quick announcement about the page and about what I'm going to be doing with it and the changes that I'm going to be making, because there's going to be some pretty significant ones since there's been some evidence, some things, I guess you should say, in my life and all of our lives actually, that have made me want to redesign my entire content strategy for this business. Everything from the Facebook page, which I'm going to use more for the sake of engaging the community and reaching out to pages and reaching out to the people that follow me and people that haven't followed me yet, but that are, hopefully in the future will be building that community and having bigger and more valuable conversations with people. I'm going to be using the Facebook page to do that still, but the change is going to be from the Hear Me Out podcast to the Dimensions of Reality, which all started on TikTok actually. On TikTok, I realized that there is a really big, desire for people to want to engage with content that has to do with UAPs or UFOs, aliens, extraterrestrials, the Illuminati, conspiracies, all that interesting stuff, that the paranormal. It's a pretty big thing. And honestly, I've been interested in all those things for forever. I mean, most of us have had an experience that has made us want to kind of investigate that even if it's just to dabble in it here and there, or watch a video and say, oh wow, that's interesting, and really kind of spark your imagination in that direction. So I will be using the Facebook page still for that outreach to the community and to kind of put some content out there, some from the TikTok, which is where I'm going to focus heavily on from now on, but some also from the podcast. So stay tuned for that. The other change, of course, is with the podcast. Now, the podcast was originally made for the sake of presenting ideas about the future of technology, or the possibilities of technology of the future that could change civilization as we know it. I was heavily, and still am heavily, invested in the idea that the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project has put out there about this resource-based economy that completely redesigns the way that civilization is structured and uses technology to kind of govern how we live our lives on a small scale, to how we manage our resources on a much larger, on a global scale. And they have a lot of interesting ideas, but even though I'm still going to bring that stuff in a little bit from time to time, that's not going to be the main focus anymore. It's going to be focused mostly on the UAP phenomena and the extraterrestrial phenomena, as well as the paranormal and everything that entails. I'm also going to be having conversations with people that are experts in the field, some people that are also just interested, and maybe every now and then, if you guys are interested, I would love to have conversations with the audience too. So if you ever want to, by all means, contact me, and I would love to set something up if I have time. And if you have time, we can set it up and have a conversation on the podcast, on TikTok, and really engage that way as well. And if you've been following my content at all, you know that there has been a lot of dramatization as well. I will still mix in the dramatization to kind of give a little bit of just something that's specific to my content, to try to give you guys some emotional content, some dramatized content that really gets you engaged in the field and shares my heart and my soul in this entire field. So there's that, and of course the TikTok and the YouTube. I am going to engage with the TikTok community and the YouTube community as well. YouTube, not so much. It's kind of going to be one of those things that I use on the side, where I make my content primarily on podcast and TikTok, but then share that same content on to YouTube, so that people can have, so that I can have a much bigger outreach, because YouTube is massive, which we all know. So there is going to be some engagement with YouTube as well. I'm going to do things like explore what books the field of UAPs and extraterrestrials are out there, and we're gonna take a look at those, and we're going to delve into them. And I'm going to have episodes where I talk just about the books, about movies, pop culture, figures in the UAP UFO field, and news too. So there's going to be a lot of content on the TikTok, a lot, and onto the YouTube channel as well, in addition to the podcast. So that's another change. And really the reason that I made this change was, one, I have always been interested in the field of UAPs. In my time, and most of you, it used to be UFOs. The government, the DoD, the Pentagon changed it from UFO to UAP. So from unidentified flying object to unidentified aerial phenomena. A bit ambiguous. You'll probably hear me say that a lot, but we're not going to get into that right now. But the people that, made this change a reality for me, really pushed me to make this change and take the leap, were people like Luis Elizondo. And Luis Elizondo he was a former U.S. Army counterintelligence agent. He worked for the Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. He joined the To the Stars Academy in 2017 until 2020 with Tom DeLonge. And he was the former director of the ATIP program within the Pentagon, which the Pentagon originally denied that he was even that he had anything to do with it. But of course, shortly after denying that, they admitted that indeed he did. And if you look on Wikipedia, if you look up Luis Elizondo, they don't update that information on there. They conveniently leave out the fact that not even a month or two after they denied that Luis Elizondo, this counterintelligence special agent that worked for the Pentagon, they denied and then admitted that he did run the ATIP program. That's conveniently left out of the Wikipedia page. Big L for you, Wikipedia, but whatever. Also, people like Jeremy Corbell, and he's been in the media for a long time, and he is very well known because of his interactions with Bob Lazar. He has a very strong, good connection with Bob Lazar. I mean, I can't believe how well connected he is to Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is the man. He's the one who brought so much of the UFO phenomena to a more real, real live, touch it, it's there, it's real light to the world. Because he claims that he worked on UFOs and he had names for them, and he talks about the people he worked with and the facility he worked at called S4, and he talks about the craft and how they work, which we're going to get into all of that because it is so interesting, and more important, it's credible, it's believable, and it's official, even though his career has been denied by the military. Yet people who've investigated it, when they track down the sources that Bob Lazar talks about, they're real sources, they're real people that knew him, that knew he worked for the military, and they're saying that he did, but they completely wiped him off the books. Really interesting stuff. A conspiracy within a conspiracy. And of course, Jeremy Corbell he's a filmmaker. He makes documentary films about a lot of things, the paranormal and UFOs and so on and so forth. So he's got a lot of experience with packaging the UFO phenomena in a way that's digestible to the community in an entertaining way. And that's actually quite important because, as we'll talk about in the podcast and on my TikTok, the reason why these people are focusing on the entertainment industry is because that's how the public can be introduced to this real phenomena and make it easier for us to kind of cope with the fact that we're not alone, and we are not the big kids on the block, and we are not the apex predator. So we'll talk about that. Moving on. Tom DeLonge also really blew my mind. I mean, this Tom DeLonge, Blink-182. I mean, when I first heard Tom DeLonge, I thought, this has got to be a joke. He's probably just some guy who's, high on shrooms and, rock star who just wants to have a weird fun at Skinwalker Ranch and see some paranormal activity. Well, I was wrong. Come to find out, when the documents came out from the DMC and Russia hacked the DNC and released all the documentation and all those emails, guess what was in those emails? And I'm sure some of you already know this. Communications between Tom DeLonge, Blink-182, Tom DeLonge, and generals, military personnel, talking about, and Clinton staffers, talking about releasing about disclosure, about extraterrestrial disclosure. Thanks, Russia, because now they put that back. They pushed it back. I cannot imagine where we'd be right now what we would know if that hadn't happened. But we're here, it happened, moving on. Tom DeLonge, the reason why, you know, aside from that kind of that put him on the radar for me personally, because that's credibility. I mean, you're busted. He is talking to generals. His most interesting encounter that he has talked about was with a general at a diner somewhere in the middle of nowhere that told him, quote, "It was the Cold War and we found a life form." I am blown away by the things that I found out just this year that have really encouraged me to make this change. Moving on. Tom DeLonge also worked with Louis Elizondo. Louis Elizondo is the person who's been coming out and talking a lot about the UAP phenomena from an official standpoint. Louis Elizondo actually left his military career, his career at the Pentagon, working for counterintelligence. He left it because whatever he was exposed to, whatever information he was exposed to, was so important that he felt like it would be better for him to resign, because he could not be of service to the American people and the world without leaving that organization and being beholden by the restrictions that they have on him. He would rather be free of that, free of the security, the pay, all that. He sacrificed so much so that we would know the truth. And that truth must be pretty darn important if he's willing to give all that up. And he has a family. He didn't give it up for fun. As you can see, if you look at his later interviews, he ain't having fun. He is doing this because he believes that it's necessary for the human race. Whatever he saw, and he does leave breadcrumbs, and we'll talk about that too, it pushed him to make that sacrifice. Big deal. And then, of course, Stephen Greer, the man who started it all. In my opinion, Stephen Greer was the first bombshell of the UAP UFO phenomena. The first. Now, I don't want to get into the controversy of Stephen Greer. I'm not going to talk about his Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I'm not going to talk about the retreats. I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff. I just want to talk about what he's contributed to the field of UFOs, because he has been a monumental force in this field. He's been a very important figure in the field. In 2001, he brought together, excuse me, I have really bad allergies, guys. I apologize. He brought together ex-military, we're talking high-ranking military individuals from the Air Force, from the Army, from all branches of the military, and a NASA astronaut, and reporters, and corporate witnesses that were willing to testify in front of Congress about their experiences with either UFOs or extraterrestrials. Now, think what you want, but these men and women were willing to testify under oath to the truthfulness of their claims. If you are in the military and you testify under oath and you lie, you're going to prison. You're going to serve prison time. They were willing to do that. Disclosure has been happening for decades. I mean, disclosures happened since 1947, when they originally said that they found a flying saucer, and then all of a sudden changed their mind and said they didn't see a saucer, it was just a weather balloon. And by the way, decades later, we had crash dummies that's what they were 6'2", which, by the way, the beings that they found were not 6'2" in 1947, but somehow decades later they were 6 foot something, because, you know, that's just the believable narrative. Anybody knows, anybody who has half a brain cell knows that 1947 Roswell, New Mexico, that was something extraterrestrial. It was not, it's not us, it's not human. It wasn't a weather balloon. We know it wasn't. They told us it wasn't. The people that were there tell us to this day that that's not what it was. They were told not to say anything. So, again, we're talking about disclosure, about us not being alone in the universe. So, this change, I believe, is essential. And I've only mentioned a few of the people that have started this whole thing. There are so many other people that have been talking about the UAP UFO phenomenon, from experiencers, from researchers, from professors who are, you know, doing these hypnotic regressions and talking about abduction experiences that lead to a narrative that is very interesting and compelling. And the Pentagon recently, May 17th in 2022, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, was questioned at a hearing by Congress, by members of Congress, about what they know about this UAP phenomenon, because they now are admitting that there is a phenomenon, that it is something. And what brought that to light was this, what's called the Nimitz encounter. The Nimitz encounter is this encounter that has been primarily brought to light by a man named David Fravor with a V. And he was a Navy pilot. He's been a pilot for, you know, 20 some years, and he's been in the military for even longer than that, where they encountered what they call the Tic Tac UFO that was tracked on from multiple sources of observation: radar, infrared, and visual, from several different pilots. All saw this phenomena of the Tic Tac UFO. And that's not the first time it's happened, but that's the first time that it's been officially been acknowledged in such an open and just massive way. This man, David Fravor, has been on Lex Friedman's show, he's been on the Joe Rogan show, he's been on the news, he's been everywhere talking about this encounter, as well as his fellow pilots have come out and also said that they saw the same thing. Some of them don't want to talk about it. Some of them are willing to come out and talk about the Nimitz encounter, where they chased a UFO and they couldn't even keep up with it. I mean, this Tic Tac was doing things like descending from 80,000 feet, mind-blowing, to 50 feet above sea level in less than a second. The reading was 0.7 seconds. Recorded. Traveling from, you know, from one point in location to 60 miles away in 5 seconds. And that's not the weirdest part. The weirdest part about that is the fact that that point that they saw this UAP, Commander Fravor, the Nimitz encounter, that point, they were on a training mission, and there was a rendezvous point that they were going to, that only David Fravor know. They're the only ones who know about this point. This UAP disappeared once it was being observed by them directly, 60 miles away in 5 seconds, at the rendezvous point that no one is supposed to. We're talking consciousness. Like this UAP knew somehow where the rendezvous point was and made it there in 5 seconds. 60 miles. That's just one example that's beneficial. Now, during that hearing on May 17th, that was probably the most disappointing hearing I've ever seen. I mean, the 2001 hearing, the 2001 National Press Club Disclosure Project, where they brought all those witnesses, those expert testimony together to talk about their experiences, that was, wow, mind-blowing. This official DOD, that was a joke. They got up there, they gave us the least convincing evidence, they told us nothing. And when they were questioned by members of Congress who did, I think they did a great job, when they asked them questions like, what about the Malmstrom incident, where a UFO shut down 10 nuclear warheads in multiple sites at a nuclear weapons facility, and no one could do anything about it, like 50 years ago or more? That was then. When they asked him about the Malmstrom incident, the response was preposterous. It was like, the response was, that is not within the purview of this investigation, of the investigation of the UAP task force. And the DoD claims it's all hands on deck. Do you know how many hands are on deck with the UAP task force? 4 hands. 4. 2 people. Here I am dropping. I'm so 2 people. 2. That's all hands on deck. What a joke. They're not even investigating. They've deemed this phenomena as a national security threat because our pilots had 11 near misses in the last, 10 or so years. Come on. You're telling the American people, the world, that this is a national security threat. But you bring your least convincing evidence as evidence that this is a national security threat, when you know that there's more evidence. Which means now it's official. And so is the cover. The world can see. And I want to be a part of it. And I want you to be a part of it. And I want to have these conversations. I want to expose this information. I want to be a part of exposing this information because disclosure, real disclosure has been happening by us, by people who just can't stand by and let whatever's unfolding unfold and surprise us when it's too late. We hear things like the phenomena is a warning. Shutting down our nukes is a warning by these beings. Stop playing with fire. There's so much to talk about. But in this video, I just wanted to get out that is the direction that I'm going to be going from now on. And I am excited to share all of this knowledge with you guys, to have conversations with people who also have knowledge, to have conversations with people who are just curious. And I want all of you to be a part of it because we are going to be a part of disclosure. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, think about this. Disclosure is we are not alone in the universe. Disclosure is, according to members of Congress who know more information than they're allowed to say, as they've said themselves, there's a possibility that extraterrestrial, that's just the beginning. Interdimensional, extra-dimensional, multiple dimensions. These craft might be coming from the future based off their technology, not speculation, not just not just a random theory from a random person, from members of Congress, from ex-counterintelligence. This might be a phenomenon that is about beings from the future, time travel, extra-dimensional, interdimensional. It's big. And I know that you know that it's big. So let's be a part of it. I look forward to getting into this topic and many other topics in relation to it. I look forward to having these conversations, and I look forward to hearing from you guys and you gals about what you think about everything we do here. Stay tuned, and let's have some